My name is Nora Caldwell, and I was 32 the year I learned what a manila folder could do to a family. My grandmother turned 79 on a Saturday in October. She baked her own cake, vanilla with buttercream roses, her specialty since before I was born. She set the table for 8 paper napkins, the good plates, dried hydrangeas from her garden. Nobody came. My parents were skiing in Aspen. My brother sent a text at 4:15. Happy B-Day, Gran. Skiing is amazing. My father didn't text at all. My mother posted a ski goggle selfie to her church group chat with the word blessed. I drove 3 hours from Hartford after my shift and found her sitting alone in the kitchen. Candles melted down to the frosting. The ice cream had gone soft. She looked at me like she wasn't sure I was real. I cut her a slice. I sang. The next day, while I was helping her clean the house, 2 strangers knocked on her door. They handed me a folder, sealed, thick, signed in my grandmother's own handwriting. What happened after that ended my family as I knew it. Welcome back to the Forgotten Daughter, where ordinary people set quiet boundaries that change everything, and dignity always gets the last word. If stories about standing up for someone who can't stand up for themselves hit close to home, drop a comment and subscribe. That evening stays pressed into me like a thumbprint in wet clay. I'd left Hartford at 5, still in my work flats, a gas station bouquet on the passenger seat. 3 hours on I-95, then the back roads through Briarwood, where the oaks arch over the pavement like a cathedral ceiling. I pulled into her gravel driveway at 8:12. The porch light was on. Every other window was dark. Inside the kitchen table told the whole story. 8 place settings. A centerpiece of dried hydrangeas she'd arranged that morning. The cake sat in the middle. Vanilla buttercream roses. 79 spelled out in pink gel. The candles burned down to waxy nubs stuck in the frosting. A gallon of Neapolitan had sweated through its carton onto the tablecloth. She was sitting at the head of the table in her lavender cardigan, hands folded around a glass of water. Nora. She smiled, then frowned. Is it Tuesday? It's Saturday, Gran. Your birthday. Oh. She touched the cake. I thought I was making this for the church bake sale. I set the flowers in a mason jar and fixed her a plate. We ate cake with our hands because neither of us felt like washing forks. I sang happy birthday twice because halfway through the first time she asked me to start over. At 10, I carried her to bed. She weighed nothing. Her wrist was the width of a paper towel roll. As I pulled the quilt to her chin, she grabbed my hand. Her eyes went sharp, focused, like a radio catching a signal through static. They think I don't notice, she whispered. I waited for more. She was already asleep. I should tell you who I am in this family. The Caldwells of Briarwood are a particular kind of Connecticut comfortable. My father, Gregory, managed regional accounts for an insurance brokerage until he could golf 3 times a week and call it consulting. My mother, Diane, organized charity galas and sat on the library board. My brother, Aaron, ran a small construction development firm, Aaron Caldwell Properties, and owned a German sedan that cost more than my annual salary. Then there was me, the paralegal. I worked at a 4-person elder law firm in Hartford. Wills, trusts, guardianship filings. I earned $47,000 a year and studied for the bar at night. My family called me the paperwork one. At holiday dinners, Diane would tilt her head and say, Nora is still doing her little legal assistant thing like I was selling friendship bracelets at a farmer's market. I didn't argue. I read fine print. But this house was mine in every way that mattered and no way that counted. I took my first steps on the kitchen linoleum. Lorraine taught me to read a lease on the back porch when I was 19. Her reading glasses perched on her nose, a red pen between her teeth. She co-signed my first apartment because my parents wouldn't. I slept in the guest room that night and lay awake tracing the ceiling crack I'd traced since I was 6. Around midnight, I got up for water. On the hallway shelf, behind a framed photo of the family, I found a business card, Brenda Voss, and Dean Reilly, with a handwritten note on the back. Comp value $68,000. Quick close possible. I put the card back. My hands were steady, but my stomach wasn't. Sunday morning, I scrubbed the kitchen while Lorraine dozed in her recliner. The cake went into Tupperware. The melted candles went into the trash. I wiped buttercream off the good plates and stacked them in the cabinet where they'd sit until whoever came to clear out the house someday. That thought landed wrong. I shoved it aside. At 10:15, someone knocked. 2 people stood on the porch. The woman was about 60. Silver bob, wool coat, leather briefcase. Professional. The man beside her was younger, maybe 40, carrying a notary seal in a zippered pouch. "Nora Caldwell?" the woman asked. "Yes, my name is Ruth Adler. This is my colleague, Nathan Pueit. Your grandmother retained my firm 14 months ago." She held out a manila folder, thick, sealed with a wax paper flap. My grandmother's name printed on the tab in blue ink. "She asked us to deliver this to you," Ruth said. "Personally, when the time came." "When the time came for what?" Ruth glanced at the recliner through the screen door. Her expression softened by a degree. "Come to my office when you're ready. Here's my card." She pressed it into my hand. "Don't discuss this with your parents before we talk." They were in their car and pulling away before I could form a second question. I stood on the porch holding the folder. It was heavier than it looked, maybe 40 pages. The seal had been signed across the flap in Lorraine's handwriting, looping and deliberate, the way she signed birthday cards and Christmas checks. My phone buzzed. A text from Diane. "Who is at the door? Don't sign anything, Nora." I turned the phone face down and brought the folder inside. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where the birthday cake had sat untouched the night before, and ran my finger along the sealed flap. Lorraine's signature crossed the seal. I recognized every curve. The capital L with its exaggerated tail, the double loop on the lowercase r. This wasn't a shaky mark. This was written by a woman who knew exactly what she was putting her name on. I broke the seal. Inside, a stack of legal documents I recognized from work. A recorded deed, a trust instrument, a durable power of attorney, notarized witness pages, a physician's letter on medical letterhead, dated 14 months ago. Clipped to the front, a handwritten note on Lorraine's personal stationery, cream paper, blue ink, the same deliberate script. "Nora, when they come for the house, open this. Everything you need is here. I love you. I'm sorry. It has to be you." I read the note 3 times. Each time the words "when they come for the house" landed harder. Not if when she'd known. 14 months ago, before the forgetting got bad. Before she started calling me by my mother's name. Before the wandering and the stove left on. And the day she got lost driving to the post office 2 blocks away. She'd known someone would come for the house. She'd prepared. I closed the folder and pressed my palm flat on top of it. Through the doorway, I could hear Lorraine snoring lightly in her recliner, a crossword puzzle slipping off her lap. She'd hired a lawyer. She'd signed documents. She'd left me instructions. That note didn't let me sleep that night. I lay in the guest room with the folder on the nightstand, watching the ceiling, listening to the house breathe. Monday morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Something in me said to stay. I found it while taking out the recycling. A lockbox. A realtor's combination lockbox clamped to the gas meter behind the hydrangea bushes, tucked just out of sight from the front walk. I knew what it was immediately. I'd seen them on every listing in Briarwood. Somebody had been showing this house. I went back inside and opened Lorraine's mail pile. 3 weeks of unsorted envelopes on the hallway table, buried between a phone bill and a coupon flyer. I found a listing sheet off market printed on Voss and Dean Reilly letterhead. The same Brenda Voss from the business card behind the photo frame. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, original hardwood, quarter-acre lot, listed at $68,000, £5,000 under the most recent comp in the neighbourhood. In the kitchen junk drawer, I found the worst of it. A purchase agreement, unsigned, but filled in. Buyer, Stonewall Capital Group, LLC, cash offer, 30-day close. Seller's signature line left blank, but someone had penciled L. Caldwell in block letters below it, like a rehearsal. The listing agent was Brenda Voss. The contact on the buyer's side was a name I didn't recognize, but the seller's representative listed on the agreement was Aaron Caldwell, my brother. I sat on the kitchen floor and spread the pages around me like a paper mosaic. The lock, the listing sheet, the purchase agreement, Brenda's card, a sticky note in Diane's handwriting. Closing target, November 15th. That was 3 weeks away. I picked up the folder from the nightstand, and this time I opened it to the first page of the trust instrument. I read every word. I called my mother at 6 o'clock that evening. "Oh, Nora." Diane's voice had that specific warmth, the one she used on parish volunteers and restaurant hostesses. "Bright managing. How's Gran doing? We had the most wonderful time in Aspen. The snow was just divine. There's a lockbox on her gas meter." Silence. 2 seconds. 3. "Sweetheart, that's being handled. Dad and Aaron have been working with a lovely agent to find a suitable transition plan for your grandmother. You know she can't keep up this big house on her own. There's a purchase agreement in her kitchen drawer." "Nora." The warmth dropped 1 register. "This is a family decision between your father, your brother, and me. We've been managing Gran's affairs for months. You don't need to worry about the details. She doesn't know the house is being sold, does she? She knows what she needs to know." Diane paused. I could hear the clink of a wine glass. "Aaron's company is in a difficult stretch. The house can fund a proper care facility for Gran and help your brother through a rough patch. It's the responsible thing. It's her house, Mom." "Nora." The register dropped again. "All the way to the basement. Cold. Final. Your grandmother has dementia. She leaves the stove on. She got lost driving to the post office. She is not the person who should be making decisions about a $62,000 asset. Then she said it. She won't remember the house by Christmas." The line hummed between us. "Then it's a good thing I remember," I said. I hung up. I picked up the manila folder and Ruth Adler's business card. I held them side by side under the kitchen light. Tomorrow I would drive to Hartford. Tonight, I had reading to do. Ruth Adler's office was on the 2nd floor of a converted brownstone on Asylum Avenue. The waiting room had faded oriental rugs, framed diplomas from Yukon Law, and a small brass sign that read Adler and Associates, Elder Law, and Estate Planning. I'd called at 7:30 that morning. Her receptionist put me through in under a minute, which if you know anything about law offices tells you they were expecting the call. "Miss Caldwell." Ruth's voice was the same measured calm from the porch. "I'm glad you reached out. Can you come in today?" I drove the 3 hours again. Ruth met me in a conference room with a pot of Earl Grey and a box of tissues she placed exactly between us on the table without comment. "Your grandmother came to me 14 months ago," she began. "Early August of last year. She'd had an episode, got disoriented driving, ended up 2 towns over, couldn't remember how to get home. A neighbor brought her back. She called me the next morning. She already knew you. She knew my firm. Her friend Dorothy had used us for a trust. Your grandmother came in alone. She was sharp, focused." Ruth paused, scared. "Of what?" "Of exactly what's happening now." Ruth folded her hands. She told me, "My son will do whatever Diane tells him, and Diane will sell the house the minute I can't stop her." She wanted to stop it before she couldn't. I put my tea down. "She chose you, Miss Caldwell, specifically," she said. "You were the only one who would fight for the house because you were the only one who understood what it meant." Ruth opened her own copy of the folder. "Your grandmother prepared for this. Let me show you how." Ruth walked me through it piece by piece. 14 months ago, August of last year, Lorraine had come to this office wearing pressed slacks and her pearl earrings, carrying a folder of her own. Deed to the house, tax records, her will from 1998. A list of questions she'd handwritten on yellow legal pad paper in the same looping blue ink I'd seen on the note. She was methodical, Ruth said. She told me she'd noticed the forgetting names first, then appointments, then the route to the post office. She said her doctor had used the word early stage. She said she had maybe a year, maybe 2 before the window closed. The window for what? For making legally binding decisions while she still had capacity. Ruth turned to Paige. She wanted 2 things. First, to protect the house. Second, to choose who would protect her when she couldn't protect herself. And she didn't choose my father. Ruth looked at me over her reading glasses. No, she did not. She said it without inflection, but the weight of it settled in my chest like a stone dropped into still water. My father was Lorraine's only child. He'd grown up in that kitchen. She'd put him through college, paid for his first suit, danced at his wedding, and when the time came to hand someone the keys to her life, she'd driven past him and gone straight to me because she knew. She knew Gregory would defer to Diane. She knew Diane would calculate. She knew Aaron would need. Your grandmother executed the documents on August 9th of last year. Ruth continued. Full capacity. Dr. Mercer, her neurologist, provided a written evaluation that same day, confirming she understood the nature and consequences of what she was signing. Ruth tapped the physician's letter. This is your foundation. The legal architecture was clean. I recognized every instrument from my work. Item 1, a revocable living trust. Lorraine had transferred the house, the deed, the title, everything into a trust. The Lorraine E. Sewell Revocable Living Trust, dated August 9th of last year. She was the trustee while she had capacity. I was the successor trustee. If she became incapacitated, legal control of the house passed to me, not my father, not Aaron. Me. Item 2, a durable power of attorney. Lorraine had named me her agent for all financial and healthcare decisions. The durability clause meant it survived her incapacity. It didn't expire when she got sick. It activated. Item 3, the physician's letter. Dr. Mercer had examined Lorraine on August 9th and documented that she demonstrated full testimonial capacity. She understood what a trust was. She understood what a power of attorney did. She understood she was placing her house beyond the reach of anyone except the granddaughter she trusted. So the house isn't hers anymore. I said technically correct. The house belongs to the trust. Lorraine can't sell it as an individual. And under this trust structure, no one holding a personal power of attorney over Lorraine has authority over assets already transferred into the trust. Only the trustee can authorize a sale, and the trustee is me, once Lorraine is determined to lack capacity. Yes, and based on what you've described, she left the stove on 3 times last month. She got lost 2 blocks from home. Ruth nodded. The successor trustee provisions are likely already active. Then she leaned forward. Miss Caldwell, there's something else you should know. If your family has had your grandmother sign anything recently, a new power of attorney, a listing agreement, while she lacked capacity, those documents may not be enforceable. She let that sit. They may have had her sign something newer. I drove back to Briarwood that evening. The house was quiet. The porch light was on, same as always. And through the front window, I could see Lorraine in her recliner, television murmuring, her reading glasses folded on the armrest. I let myself in with the spare key she'd given me when I was 16, the one she'd never given my parents. Gran. She looked up for a moment, 3 seconds, maybe 4. Her eyes were absolutely clear. Not the soft confusion of most days, not the pleasant fog, clear like creek water over gravel. You went to see Ruth, she said. I stopped in the doorway. You remember Ruth? I remember enough. She picked up her reading glasses and turned them in her hands. I remember I was scared, and I went to a lawyer and I told her what Diane would do. Did I get it right? I sat on the arm of the couch. You got it exactly right, Gran. Good. She put the glasses on, then took them off again, as if she'd forgotten why she'd reached for them. They've been bringing people through the house Tuesdays when the nurse is here. I hear the doors open and close, strangers looking at my kitchen. I know. Your father won't look at me when he visits. He talks to the walls. She pressed her lips together. Aaron brought papers. I don't remember what I signed. I took her hand. It doesn't matter what you signed. You already took care of it. She squeezed my fingers. Her grip was thin but deliberate. I'm not gone yet, Nora. The words hung in the kitchen air between us, fragile and fierce. By tomorrow, she might not remember saying them, but I would. I would remember for both of us. Aaron showed up Wednesday. He didn't knock. He never knocked. Just walked in with his car keys jingling and his smile already on. The way he entered every room, like the room should be glad he'd arrived. Hey, Nor. He kissed the top of my head. He smelled like cedar cologne and the leather interior of a $5,000 SUV. Checking in on Gran. That's sweet. I'm staying for a while. Oh, yeah. He opened the fridge, helped himself to a lacqua, and leaned against the counter like he owned the place. Taking some time off from the paralegal gig. He said paralegal the way you'd say hobby. Aaron, I know about the listing. His lacqua paused halfway to his mouth. One beat, two, then the smile adjusted. Not gone, just reclassified. Warmth to negotiation. Look, I know it seems fast, but here's the thing. The company's in a rough patch. I've got a balloon payment coming due in 8 weeks, $74,000. If I miss it, the bank takes everything. Every project, every contract, 3 years of work gone. So you're selling Gran's house. I'm helping the family manage an asset that Gran can't manage herself. He set the can down. Nora, the money solves everything. Gran gets a nice facility. Dad and Mom stop worrying. I keep my business. Everybody wins except Gran. Gran doesn't know what day it is. She knows people are walking through her house. Aaron's jaw tightened. He stepped closer. Don't make this difficult. We're family. Family helps family. Is that what you told her when you brought the papers? He stared at me. Then the smile came back, but harder now. Performative. It's basically sold already, Nora. The closing set. He left his empty can on the counter and walked out without rinsing it. That night, I searched in the bottom of the hallway credenza behind a stack of old guideposts magazines. I found what they'd had her sign, a power of attorney, dated September 3rd, barely 2 months ago. It named Gregory Caldwell as Lorraine's agent for all financial and property decisions. Stapled to it was a listing authorization for the house, also dated September 3rd, granting Aaron Caldwell the right to act as seller's representative. I carried both documents to the kitchen table and laid them beside the originals from Ruth's folder. The signature differences hit me before I finished unfolding the pages. Lorraine's trust documents from 14 months ago. Strong pen pressure, the loops clean and confident. Every letter connecting to the next with that distinctive tail on the capital L. I knew this hand. This was the woman who'd written grocery lists in cursive and signed my high school permission slips with a fountain pen. The September power of attorney, trembling lines. The L barely rose above the baseline. The loops collapsed. The pen had lifted between letters, leaving gaps where flow should be. This was not the hand of a woman who understood what she was signing. This was the hand of a woman who was told where to press down. I pulled up the calendar on my phone and checked the date. September 3rd. My stomach dropped. September 3rd was the same week Lorraine had been taken to the ER after a fall. I'd received a text from Diane. Gran took a tumble. Nothing serious. She's resting. And thought nothing of it. The discharge summary, which I found in the mail pile, noted patient disoriented, intermittent confusion. Recommend neurological follow-up. They'd had her sign a power of attorney during the same week she'd been hospitalized for confusion. I took photos of everything. Then I called Ruth. Ruth came to the house on Friday. Not her office, the house. She said it mattered that we do this at Lorraine's kitchen table. I understood why the moment she laid everything out. The table was old maple, scratched from 50 years of Thanksgivings, stained with coffee rings that Lorraine had always said gave it character. Now it held 5 documents in a row, edges aligned like evidence at a hearing. Document 1, the recorded trust deed filed with the Briarwood Town Clerk on August 12th of last year. The house had been legally transferred into the Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust 14 months ago. It was stamped, indexed, and recorded. Public record. Document 2, the durable power of attorney, naming me, Nora Caldwell, as Lorraine's agent, executed the same day. 2 witnesses, notarized by Nathan Pewitt. Document 3, Dr. Mercer's capacity evaluation letter, dated August 9th. 2 pages clinical precise. Mrs. Caldwell demonstrates full understanding of the nature and consequences of the legal instruments she is executing. She is oriented to time, place, and person. She identifies her assets accurately and articulates clear preferences for their disposition. Document 4, the September power of attorney, the one naming Gregory. Shaky signature, no capacity evaluation, no independent witness, executed during a week of documented medical confusion. Document 5, the listing agreement. Aaron's name as seller's representative, Brenda Voss as agent, an off-market sale priced $50,000 below comparable homes. Ruth stood across from me, hands flat on the table. "The house has been in the trust for over a year," she said. "Your grandmother cannot sell it as an individual. The September power of attorney, even if it were valid, doesn't grant authority over trust assets, and it almost certainly isn't valid given the medical record." She looked at me. "This sale cannot close. The house was never theirs to sell." I stared at the documents, at the 2 signatures side by side, one strong, one trembling, at the physician's letter that drew a line between the woman Lorraine was and the woman they'd taken advantage of. "She won't remember the house by Christmas." Diane's voice echoed in my head. But Lorraine had remembered. She'd remembered before any of them. Ruth and I made a plan. Quiet, methodical, the kind of plan built on paper, not anger. Step 1. We needed a current capacity evaluation for Lorraine, something a court would accept to confirm that the September PA was signed when she lacked the mental ability to understand it. That meant contacting Dr. Mercer's office and scheduling a formal neurocognitive assessment. I called Monday morning. The receptionist put me on hold for 11 minutes. When she came back, her voice had a careful, practiced quality I recognized from my own work. The tone people use when they're about to deliver bad news wrapped in protocol. "I'm sorry, Miss Caldwell, but we've received a request to restrict access to Mrs. Caldwell's medical records." I gripped the phone. "Restrict access from whom?" "I can't disclose that, but I can tell you the request came in approximately 6 weeks ago, and it specifies that medical records and evaluation results are not to be released to anyone other than the designated family contact." "And who is the designated family contact?" Pause. "Gregory Caldwell. My father." They'd locked me out of her medical records. I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot and pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. 6 weeks ago. That was mid-September. Right after they'd had her sign the power of attorney, they hadn't just gotten her to sign. They'd built a wall around her. I called Ruth. They restricted her records. Expected. Ruth didn't sound surprised. "We'll file a HIPAA authorization under the durable POA. Your POA predates theirs and names you as healthcare agent. The clinic is legally obligated to honor it. I'll send the paperwork today." 2 days later, I had the records. Dr. Mercer agreed to perform a current evaluation. "The system works," I told myself slowly, "but it works." Diane came to the house on a Thursday evening. She didn't bring flowers or food or any of the things you'd bring if you were visiting your mother-in-law. She brought a brochure, Maple Glen, assisted living. She spread it on the kitchen table. The same table where Ruth and I had laid out the documents 3 days earlier. It's a beautiful facility. Nora private rooms, a garden activities every afternoon. Gran doesn't want to leave her house. Gran doesn't know what she wants. Diane smoothed the brochure with both palms. "Your father and I have been looking into this for weeks. If we transition her before Thanksgiving, we can have the house staged and listed by December 1st. I looked at her. She was wearing her church pearls and the cashmere scarf she'd bought in Aspen. You're staging the house for the buyer you already have. Diane's expression flickered. Just a flash, the briefest crack in the plaster. Nora, I know this is emotional for you. You've always been attached to this house, but your brother's company is in real trouble, and this family needs to pull together. By selling a 79-year-old woman's home out from under her. After everything I've done for this family. Her voice cracked. Real tears or performative ones? I couldn't tell. And after 32 years, I'd stopped trying. The papers are already with the title company, she said. The closing is November 15th. This is happening, Nora. She left the brochure on the table. I almost walked away that night. It would have been easier. But if you've ever watched someone decide that an older person's worth came with an expiration date, you know exactly why I stayed. If this story is hitting close to home, type I see her in the comments and subscribe so you're here for what happens at the closing table. I had 9 days. The closing was set for November 15th at Capital Title Services on Main Street, 3 blocks from the Briarwood Town Green. Diane had booked it like she was booking a dinner reservation. Efficient, final, not open for discussion. I sat in Ruth's conference room the next morning and laid out the options. Option 1, file an emergency petition with the probate court to block the sale. It would work. Ruth was confident, but it would be public, slow and expensive, and it would give Aaron and Diane time to scramble, time to move Lorraine, time to hire their own attorney, time to muddy the water. Option 2, let the closing happen. Walk in with the documents. Let the truth do what truth does when it meets paperwork that can't withstand it. If you show up at the closing with the recorded trust deed and the capacity evidence, Ruth said, the title company will do the work for you. They can't insure a title that's in dispute. They won't close the transaction. It ends in that room. And if they try to push through anyway, title officers are personally liable. No officer with a brain will record a deed they know is defective. Ruth took off her glasses and set them on the table. This is the quieter path. No courtroom, no filings, just documents on a table in front of witnesses. The buyer, the agent, the title officer, your family, they'll all be in one room, and the documents will speak for themselves. I thought about Lorraine's note when they come for the house. She hadn't told me to go to court. She'd given me a folder. Let the documents talk, Ruth said. 9 days. I went home and started counting. Day 1 of 9. I filed a report with Adult Protective Services. I sat in my car outside the Briarwood Municipal Building and dialed the State Elder Abuse Hotline. The intake worker was patient, precise, and completely unsurprised by anything I described. She'd heard it before. Different names, same architecture. I gave her the facts. A 79-year-old woman with documented dementia, a power of attorney signed during a week of hospitalization, an off-market home sale priced below comparable value, a son profiting from the transaction, a daughter-in-law directing the process. We'll assign an investigator. The intake worker said you'll receive a case number within 72 hours. Is there anything that expedites the process? You mentioned there is a closing date in 9 days. I'll flag it as time-sensitive. I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat in the car for a full minute watching 2 elderly women walk into the library across the street, arm in arm, laughing about something. Normal safe. When I got back to the house, I found a voicemail from Ruth. Nora, something interesting came up. A PS told me informally that yours isn't the first report they've received on this situation. Someone filed an anonymous complaint about 6 weeks ago. They didn't follow up at the time because the complainant didn't leave contact information, but the file exists. 6 weeks ago, right around the time they'd had Lorraine sign the September power of attorney. Someone else had seen what was happening. Someone who hadn't been brave enough to leave a name, but had cared enough to pick up the phone. I didn't know who. Not then. But the fact that the file already existed meant APS wouldn't be starting from scratch. The system was slower than anger, but it was building. Day 4. My father came alone. He pulled into the driveway in his 10-year-old Buick. Not the car he drove to church or the club, but the one he used for errands, the one nobody would notice. He sat behind the wheel for a long time before he got out. I watched from the kitchen window. His shoulders were hunched. He looked smaller than I remembered. He came in through the back door the way he'd entered this house since he was a boy. He didn't acknowledge me at first. He just stood in the kitchen and looked around at the cabinets. His mother had refinished herself at the window over the sink, where she'd hung a prism that threw rainbows across the floor every morning. "She used to sing in this kitchen," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Patty Klein every Sunday morning. I remember." He sat at the table. He put his hands flat on the maple surface, and I saw them shake. "I know what you think of me," he said. I waited. "I'm not. I didn't want any of this. Aaron's in over his head. Diane says the house is the only way. And Mom," his voice broke, just barely. "A hairline fracture in a foundation. Mom wouldn't want Aaron to lose everything. You could still stop this, Dad." He looked at me for 1 second. One awful, trembling second. I saw the boy who'd grown up in this kitchen, who'd eaten cake off these plates, who'd been carried to bed by the same woman now sleeping in the next room. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Diane. He stood up. "I should go." He left through the back door. He didn't say goodbye to his mother. I washed his coffee cup and put it away. Day 5. I bought a cake, not a fancy one. A 6-inch round from the bakery on Elm Street, vanilla with buttercream because that's what she loved, and a single candle because 79 individual candles seemed like a fire hazard, and I wanted to make her laugh. I set it on the kitchen table at 3 o'clock. I put out 2 plates, 2 forks, 2 napkins. I made tea. "Gran, come sit." She shuffled in from the living room, reading glasses on top of her head, a crossword puzzle folded in her cardigan pocket. She saw the cake and stopped. "Whose birthday?" "Yours. We're doing it over." She sat down. I lit the candle. She looked at the flame. The way you look at something you're trying to hold in your mind carefully, deliberately, like if she stared hard enough the moment would stick. "Make a wish," I said. She closed her eyes. She blew. The candle went out on the first try. "What did you wish for?" She looked at me with those clear creek eyes. "I wished you'd stay. We ate cake with forks this time." She told me about the hydrangeas she'd planted along the front walk in 1987, the year I was born. She told me the kitchen table came from her mother's house in Bridgeport, carried in on the back of a pickup truck in 1974, and that every scratch on its surface was a Thanksgiving she'd won. Then she put her fork down and leaned toward me. "Don't let them take the table," she said. "Quiet, fierce." "I won't, Gran. The table stays." I cleared the plates. I washed the dish. I wrapped the leftover cake in foil and wrote Gran's birthday round 2 on it with a Sharpie. 4 days until the closing. Day 6. The phone calls started. My Aunt Caroline, my father's cousin, called first. She was careful, concerned. "Nora, honey, your mother says you're trying to take control of Lorraine's finances. She says you're well. She used the word manipulating." I held the phone away from my ear and looked at the ceiling. "Aunt Caroline, did Diane mention that she and Aaron are trying to sell Gran's house while Gran has dementia?" Silence. She said it was a family decision. It's a decision Gran didn't make. My mother's friend from the parish council called next. Then Aaron's business partner. Then a woman from the garden club who'd known Lorraine for 40 years. Each call carried the same script, slight variations on the same theme. Nora is overstepping. Nora is emotional. Nora doesn't understand the family's financial situation. Diane had done what Diane did best. She'd shaped the narrative before I had a chance to speak. I didn't counter it. I didn't post on social media. I didn't call anyone back to plead my case. Ruth had told me, The documents speak. You don't have to. But on day 6, around 9 at night, my phone rang one more time. Aunt June, Lorraine's younger sister, 81, still sharp, still in Bridgeport. Nora. Her voice was dry and clear. I don't believe a word Diana is saying, and I want you to know why. Why? Because your grandmother called me last year, August. She said she'd been to see a lawyer. She said she was putting the house in order while she still could. She said, if anything happens, back Nora up. I gripped the phone. I'm backing you up. Aunt June said, whatever you need. 3 days until the closing. Day 7. Ruth and I confirmed the details. Capital Title Services, November 15th, 2 o'clock. Conference Room B. The escrow officer was a woman named Linda Yates, 22 years in the business. Ruth's contact said thorough by the book. The buyer was Stonewall Capital Group, a regional cash acquisition firm that bought undervalued residential properties, flipped or rented them, and moved on. Their representative was a man named Daniel FSY. He had been copied on the listing agreement and the purchase contract. Brenda Voss would be there as the listing agent. Diane and Aaron would attend as sellers' representatives. Gregory would come because Diane told him to. Ruth made one more call to the title company off the record and learned something that made her pause. Linda Yates flagged the file 3 weeks ago. Ruth told me during the preliminary title search, she noted that the house was held in a trust. She contacted Brenda Voss for clarification. Brenda sent over a signed affidavit claiming the trust had been dissolved and the property reconveyed to Lorraine individually. Linda accepted it provisionally, but noted in her file that no recorded reconveyance deed had been found. The closing was scheduled as tentative, pending final title clearance. A clerical error. Brenda told her the trust had been dissolved and the property returned to Lorraine's individual name. That's not true, of course. The trust was never dissolved. The deed is still recorded. The deal was already standing on cracked ice. Linda Yates had a flag in the file. Brenda Voss had lied. The recorded trust deed was public record. All it needed was someone to put the original on the table. Here's the thing about paperwork people underestimate. It doesn't raise its voice and it doesn't forget. If you've ever been the quiet one nobody took seriously, this next part is for you. Subscribe and stay with me to the closing table. 2 days left, day 8. Everything was in place. Ruth would attend the closing as Lorraine's attorney of record representing the trust. She'd bring certified copies of the recorded trust deed, the durable power of attorney, and the physician's capacity evaluation. Nathan Hewitt would come as a notary witness. A PS had assigned an investigator named Sandra Weeks. She wouldn't be in the room. That wasn't how it worked, but she'd confirmed the case was active and time-sensitive. Whatever happened at the closing would become part of her file. I spent the afternoon at the kitchen table reviewing the documents one more time. Trust deed, PA capacity letter, the September POA with the shaking signature, the listing agreement, the purchase contract, the discharge summary from Lorraine's September hospital stay. Everything lined up, every date, every signature, every medical note pointed in the same direction. I practiced what I would say. Short sentences, no accusations, no emotion, just facts. Delivered at the volume of a normal conversation. Ruth had coached me. You're not there to argue. You're not there to convince anyone. You're there to present documents that speak for themselves. Let the title officer do the rest. I wasn't the daughter they'd ignored. I wasn't the paperwork one. I was the successor trustee of the Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust, and I had every legal right to sit at that table. More than a right, an obligation. That evening, I ironed a blouse and set out my work flats. The same flats I'd worn the night I'd driven 3 hours to sing happy birthday to a woman sitting alone in her kitchen. Tomorrow, they'd sit down to sign for a house that wasn't theirs, and I would be there when they found out. The night before the closing, I sat with Lorraine in the living room. She was having a good hour, not a good day. Those were rare now, but a good hour. She was working on a crossword with her reading glasses perched at the end of her nose, filling in the squares with a ballpoint pen. No pencil, because she said pencils were for people who didn't trust themselves. Gran, tomorrow's going to be a big day. M. She didn't look up. 7 across. Legal instrument of protection. 5 letters. I smiled. Trust. She wrote it in. Smarty pants. I watched her hand. The pen moved slowly but with intention. The letters were small and careful. Not the looping confidence of 14 months ago, but not the collapse of the September signature either. Somewhere in between, a woman at the edge of the window, still reaching for the glass. She put the crossword down and looked at me. You're staying. I'm staying. She reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out her reading glasses case, the leather one with the brass clasp she'd carried since I was a girl. She opened it, took out a folded piece of paper, and handed it to me. It was a note written in her handwriting, shaky, but legible, recent for Nora, the keeper of the table. Below it, her signature, not the strong one from last year, not the broken one from September. A middle ground, trembling, but intentional, written by a woman who knew she was fading and wanted to leave one more mark while she still could. I'm not gone yet, she said. I folded the note into my wallet. In the morning, the folder, the note, and I would go to the closing together. Capital Title Services occupied a single-story brick building on Main Street with tinted windows and a brass door handle polished to a mirror finish. I parked across the street at 1:45. Ruth pulled in beside me at 1:50. Nathan was already inside. We walked in together. Ruth carried her briefcase. I carried the manila folder. Conference room B was small. 10 chairs around an oval table, a water pitcher, a printer humming in the corner. Linda Yates, the escrow officer, was arranging documents in neat stacks at the head of the table. She looked up when we entered, glanced at Ruth, and paused for half a second. The kind of pause that meant she recognized the name. Madler, I didn't see your firm listed on the transaction. I represent the Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust, Ruth said. We have documents relevant to this closing. Linda Yates's pen stopped moving. Before she could respond, the door opened behind us. Diane came in first. Cashmere blazer, church pearls. Her smile was already in position. Bright, social, the hostess arriving at her own party. Aaron followed in a tailored sport coat, his jaw set, a leather portfolio under his arm. Gregory trailed them, grey-faced, looking at the floor. Behind them came Brenda Voss, the realtor, blonde highlights, kitten heels, a stack of closing documents fanned in her hand like a winning hand of cards. And last, Daniel FSY, the buyer's representative, in a navy suit and no-nonsense expression. Diane saw me and stopped. Nora. She looked at Ruth at the folder in my hands. Her smile didn't change, but the muscles underneath it did. What are you doing here? Taking a seat, I said. I sat down at the table. Ruth sat beside me. I placed the manila folder in front of me and I waited. The room was very quiet. The printer had stopped humming. Linda Yates looked at Ruth. You said you have documents. I do. Ruth opened her briefcase and laid 3 items on the table, one at a time, each centered and square, the way you'd lay evidence before a judge. First, a certified copy of the recorded trust deed. This deed was recorded with the Briarwood Town Clerk on August 12th of last year. It transfers the property at 14 Oakwood Lane into the Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust. Miss Caldwell, she nodded toward me, is the successor trustee. Dean's smile fell, not all at once, in stages like a building losing floors. Second, the durable power of attorney naming me as Lorraine's agent. Executed on August 9th of last year, notarized, witnessed, currently in effect. Aaron leaned forward. We have a more recent power of attorney that supersedes third. Ruth placed the physician's letter on the table. A capacity evaluation by Dr. Helen Mercer, Lorraine's neurologist, dated August 9th. It confirms that Lorraine had full testamement capacity when she signed these documents. I also have Doctor from Mercer's current evaluation completed last week, confirming that Lorraine now lacks capacity, meaning any documents she signed after her cognitive decline, including the September power of attorney your family obtained, were signed without the legal competence required to make them binding. The room went still. Linda Yates picked up the trusted. She read it. She compared it to the title report in her file. She looked at Brenda Voss. Ms. Voss, you informed me the trust had been dissolved. Brenda's face went white. I was told the trust was never dissolved. Ruth said, the recorded deed confirms it. This property belongs to the trust. The sale cannot proceed. Linda Yates set the documents down, squared her shoulders, and said the 5 words that ended it. I cannot close this transaction. She remembered. She remembered everything. Daniel FSY closed his portfolio. Brenda stared at the table. Aaron gripped the armrests of his chair until his knuckles blanched, and Diane looked at me like I'd pulled the house out from under her feet. The silence lasted 4 seconds. Then Diane broke it. This is ridiculous. Her voice climbed. She stood up, palms flat on the table, pearls swinging. Nora is a paralegal. She has no authority. My husband is Lorraine's son, her only child, and he has a signed power of attorney that gives him full control over a power of attorney signed by a woman who was hospitalized for confusion the same week, Ruth said. Even measured a power of attorney with no capacity evaluation attached. A power of attorney that even if valid does not grant authority over assets held in a trust. You can't do this. Aaron stood now too. His voice wasn't Diane's theatrical escalation. It was raw. I have a $74,000 payment due in 6 weeks. If this deal falls through, Mr. Caldwell, your financial obligations are not this office's concern. Linda Yates said, This is my grandmother's house. This is the trust's house. Ruth corrected. Administered by the trustee, your grandmother appointed. That trustee is sitting at this table. Aaron turned on me. You're going to destroy this family. I looked at him. I kept my voice at exactly the volume I'd practiced. Conversational, steady. You tried to sell a 79-year-old woman's home while she sat alone on her birthday eating cake. Nobody came to cut. You had her sign documents during a hospital stay. You lied to the title company about a dissolved trust. And you're telling me I'm the one destroying this family? Aaron's mouth opened, closed. His fists were clenched at his sides. Diane was crying now. Loud, messy sobs. After everything I've done. Gregory sat motionless. He hadn't spoken since he'd entered the room. He stared at the trusted, at his mother's signature, and I could see him doing the math. She'd planned this. She'd gone around him. She looked at her only son and decided he wasn't enough. Daniel FSY stood. I think we're done here. He nodded to Linda Yates and walked out. Brenda Voss was already gathering her things, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Ruth spoke into the quiet. For the record, an Adult Protective Services investigation into the financial exploitation of Lorraine Caldwell is currently active. The September power of attorney will be formally challenged. Any further attempts to sell, encumber, or transfer trust property without the trustee's authorization will be treated as a legal matter. Diane stopped crying. She stared at Ruth, then at me, the tears still wet on her cheeks, but the expression underneath them shifting from grief to something harder. You'll regret this, she said. When Aaron loses his company, when your father has nowhere to turn, when this family falls apart, you'll remember that you did this. I stood up. I picked up the manila folder and placed it in my bag. I looked at my mother at the cashmere, the pearls, the tears she'd learned to deploy like weather. You don't get to decide what she's worth, I said. Then I turned to Linda Yates. Thank you for your professionalism, Miss Caldwell. Linda nodded. I'll be documenting this closing as void and flagging the file. You'll receive confirmation by email. I walked out of conference room B. Ruth followed. Nathan held the door. The November air hit my face cold and clean, and I stood on the sidewalk for 10 full seconds before I remembered to breathe. Ruth touched my elbow. You did well. I did what she asked me to. That's what I mean. I drove back to Oakwood Lane with the folder on the passenger seat, exactly where the gas station bouquet had been 9 days ago. The house was still there. The hydrangeas were still along the front walk. The porch light was on. I went inside and found my grandmother asleep in her recliner, crossword in her lap, reading glasses on. I knelt beside her chair and tucked the quilt around her shoulders. It's done, Gran, I said. The house is safe. She stirred. Her hand found mine. The same thin grip, the same paper towel roll wrist. Her eyes opened, cloudy at first, then clearing for just a moment. Nora, I'm here. Did you keep the table? I laughed. A real one. The kind that comes up from somewhere deep and surprises you. I kept the table. She smiled. Small, certain, good girl. She closed her eyes. Within a minute she was asleep again, her breathing slow and even, the crossword puzzle rising and falling on her chest. I sat on the floor beside her recliner and looked at the kitchen through the doorway, at the maple table, scratched and coffee-stained, still standing where it had stood since 1974. The folder was in my bag. The note was in my wallet. The house was in the trust, and for the first time in 9 days, the counting stopped. Here's what happened after Aaron's balloon payment came due 8 weeks later, right on schedule. He missed it. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings on his development projects, 3 half-finished town homes in Glastonbury and a commercial lot in Wethersfield. Aaron Caldwell. Properties filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in January. He sold the German sedan. Last I heard, he was working as a project manager for someone else's firm, making 1/3 of what he had made before. He never called to apologize. Diane's standing in Briarwood fractured. Not all at once. Reputations erode slowly in small towns, but the story leaked. People talk. Aunt June talked. Linda Yates documented everything in the closing file. The church group chat, the one where Diane had posted her Aspen selfie, went quiet around her. She stopped attending the library board. She and Gregory moved to a condo in West Hartford in the spring. My father emailed me once in March. 3 sentences. I should have done more. I know that now. I'm sorry. I read it twice. I didn't respond. Some apologies are too late to be anything but a record of what a person knows they should have said. A PS substantiated the complaint. Over the following 3 months, through 2 probate hearings that no one in my family contested, the September power of attorney was formally voided. The court appointed me as Lorraine's legal guardian and confirmed my role as permanent trustee of her trust. I deferred my bar exam. I took a leave of absence from the firm. I moved into the guest room at 14 Oakwood Lane, the one with the ceiling crack I'd traced since I was 6, and I became the person who made sure Lorraine Caldwell ate dinner, took her medication, and sat on the porch in the afternoons when the light came through the hydrangeas. It wasn't the career step I'd planned. It was the right one. On a Tuesday in April, I baked a cake, vanilla with buttercream, nothing fancy. I set it on the kitchen table, the table from Bridgeport, the one that had survived 50 years of Thanksgivings and 1 attempted theft. Lorraine came in from the living room, crossword in hand. Whose birthday? Nobody's. It's Tuesday. We're having cake because it's Tuesday. She sat down. She picked up a fork. She took a bite and closed her eyes. This is my recipe, she said. It is good. She took another bite. Don't change it. We ate in the kitchen with the afternoon light striping through the window. The prism still hung above the sink, throwing small rainbows across the floor. The table held. A person's worth doesn't expire when their memory does. And the quietest love in a family is sometimes the only one keeping watch. That's my story. One empty party, one manila folder, and a grandmother who remembered first. If this reminded you to check on a loved one's directive, do it today. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.